Welcome to Pixelated Zen presents Nostalgialess. I'm your host Krovlar, and today we're going to be taking a look at Spider-Man and the X-Men Arcade's Revenge for the SNES and the Genesis. Released in 1992 for the SNES and 1993 for the Sega Genesis, developed by Software Creations and published by LJN, Spider-Man and the X-Men Arcade's Revenge is a side-scrolling platformer containing 10 full levels and a handful of mini-levels. You start the game controlling Spider-Man, who's just seen Storm, Wolverine, Gambit, and Cyclops captured by Arcade. The first level is you following your spider sense to specific blinking nodes. Once you've gotten all the nodes, you can move on to the main character select screen. Each character has 2 unique levels that must be completed in order, though you can choose to do any particular character in whatever order you wish. It's worth noting that after you get past the first level, if you die and run out of continues, it will ask you if you want to play the first level again or skip it, as long as you haven't turned the console off, that is. Spider-Man plays differently from the other Spidey games we played up to this point. First of all, he has no melee attack, only a web blast. That's fine, as the other button is used for web swinging. Spidey controls well, he's responsive, and I never felt like I died due to the controls while playing his levels. Then there are the X-Men, and this is where the game falls down hard. First, we'll look at Cyclops, who I love the look of, and have always liked his potential as a character, even if he's always been a little too smarmy and self-righteous for his own good. When playing Cyclops, you can jump, kick, or shoot optic blasts. You can even shoot diagonally up or down, and shoot while ducking. That's all great, except that if you press down to duck, you do not get back up when you let go of the button. It's a toggle, which means that you'll either have to press up or jump, or you'll just sit there ducking. That got me killed several times as I tried to run one way or the other after unleashing a ducking optic blast at an enemy, only to be rooted in place a second too long. Cyclops' first level is also filled with several dead-end paths and many instant death situations. There's one section where an entire platform drops on your head and you'd have no way of knowing it was coming unless it had already killed you and you just remembered where it was from the last time. The biggest problem with Cyclops, however, is his optic blasts. Specifically, the speed at which you fire them is directly tied into how much health you have left. So, when you're toward the end of the level and you're down to 1 or 2 hits until you're dead, and your blood is pumping and you're in that I can do it mode, Cyclops fires shots so slowly it's impossible to win. You might as well start the level over again. It's infuriating, like Cyclops suddenly becomes the depressed robot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with no will to live and just going through the motions until he dies. Then, you have the Storm levels. Good God, who the hell decided to do this? Storm levels are both underwater, the entire time. That's right. After you free Storm, she jumps into a dark, cramped underwater location, presumably because she hates herself and she wants her claustrophobia to kick in. Not to mention her attack is electricity. That's right, she's swimming through dark, tight underwater corridors, shooting electricity willy-nilly at anything she sees. Great call there. These levels are underwater awful, and anyone who's played an underwater level knows what I mean. The only bright spots are the boss fights, which aren't even bosses, they're more machines that need deactivating. Still, those sections were fun. What was not fun was the fact that her health and breath were the same bar. That means if you get hit, you lose breath and life. If you have been swimming for a while and you're low on breath, that also means that you're 1 hit from death as well. Who designed that? Next, we have Wolverine's levels. They're all styled after the circus, and I have no idea why. You start with your claws in, so the first thing you're going to want to do is take them out. You do more damage this way, but you don't regenerate health. Speaking of, if you retract your claws and stand still, sometimes Wolverine will heal. Other times he won't. It makes no sense, and I could find no logical pattern in it. Wolverine's second level is a great concept, but with extremely poor execution. Juggernaut is chasing you, and you have to stay ahead of him to live, but you also need to cut the ropes on these anvils overhead so that they fall onto his head. You need to make sure that you've made enough anvils fall on his head by the end of the level, or you'll insta-die. That's annoying, but it's not game-breaking. What is game-breaking is that there are also thugs with bombs, guns, and pies attacking you as you go, and walls that you have to cut through in order to proceed. This means that you need to run ahead of Juggernaut in order to cut through the walls before he gets there. But the longer Juggy goes without getting hit on his head, the faster he runs, which means you constantly have to run back, hit him on the head, then turn around and cut the wall. Then you hit him on the head again and move on, doing it over and over and over. Finally, we get to Gambit's levels. These levels are shit. They're designed after a card/chess/checkers motif, and that's about all I can say that's enjoyable from them. For the first level, a giant spike ball is chasing you, and you have to move quickly to stay ahead of it. Gambit has 2 gauges though, one for his life and one for the amount of cards he has left. He starts with 52, and every time you throw a card, you lose 1 on your gauge. Defeated enemies drop cards, so you'll need to defeat enough enemies to get enough cards to have a good supply. If you run out of cards, you're fucked. That's it. You have no other attack options. You can't punch anything, you can't use a staff, you can't do shit. All you can do is lay down and die. The second level has the floor rising, and you need to clear blocks and enemies above you before the floor reaches them or you die. This game is extremely hard, but the Gambit levels were blinding rage-inducing. I hated every minute I spent on them, and to make matters worse, if a normal enemy touches the side of the screen, they become a harder enemy when they come back to fight you. It was terrible, and whoever designed the levels in this game needs to be punished for it. After you beat the 2 levels for each of the characters, you're given 1 short level for each of the X-Men, with the enemies this time being themed after their previous levels. These are pretty easy, and Storm is on land now. She can't fly, but she jumps really high and her sprite looks weird. At the end of each of these levels, the X-Men are captured again. Only Spider-Man avoids capture and has to battle Arcade and a giant robot. The final fight is pretty cool, and the X-Men stand on the sides of the screen trapped, but shooting attacks at Arcade if he gets too close. It was a fun, not too difficult fight, but getting there was an awful experience. The graphics were mostly fine, with the exception of Gambit, who looked a little weird, especially his footy pajama outfit. His final boss also looked a little mannish as well. The music was enjoyable on the SNES, less so on the Genesis version, which I only played for about an hour, as by the time I finished the SNES version, I was done with the game. It's got some great ideas and some interesting gameplay, but the level designer was an asshole. The game is extremely hard to beat, and there really aren't any redeeming factors. There are much better Spider-Man games from this era, and there are much, much better X-Men games for the Genesis. I can't recommend anyone pick this up. Just avoid the game unless you're a collector.